Hey, all. Today we are going to continue talking about equations of lines. We talked about in the last unit. And we were getting equations of lines from graphs. And today we're going to get equations of lines given different information. So let's just have a quick chat about our equation of a line in slope-intercept form. That looks like that. And remember that M represented the slope, how slanted the line was, and B represented the y-intercept, the place where the line crosses the y-axis. And in order to write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form, in order to be able to write the equation of a line in this form, those are the two things we need to know. As soon as we know those two things, we can write the equation of a line. So in my example here, I have the slope and I have the y-intercept, which in coordinate form would look like this. And so this is M, -1/2 is M, and -3 is my B. So I can build my equation of a line. So I always like to write my equation with the y and the x, because I know that those have to exist in my equation. And then I could just plug in what I know. My slope is -1/2, so I plug that in. M always goes before x. And it's not going to be plus -3. We get the operation from the intercept, and so since that's negative, we say -3. And so that's my equation with slope -1/2 and intercept -3. So this is something that we've done. We've gotten the information from graphs. Just a little refresher, because we're going to change this up slightly. So now I'm going to give you the slope of my line. So here's my M. And then I'm going to give you a point that my line goes through. So I have a line that has a slope of -1. It goes down to the right. And it goes through this point, -3, 5. So somewhere on my line, I have a point, and the coordinates are -3 in the x and 5 in the y. And so I want to write the equation that has the slope -1 and goes through that point. So I'm always going to start with y equals mx plus b. The two things that I need to know about my line to write its equation is the slope and the y-intercept. Well, right now I know the slope, so I can plug that in. But I need to know the y-intercept. I need to know what b is. So before we can write our equation, we need to find b. Once we find b, we can plug it back in and we'll have our equation since we already have the slope. Well, any point that a line goes through has an x and a y. And I should be able to plug the x and plug the y into my equation and make it a true equation. So in order to find b, I can plug in my x as -3. And I can plug in 5 for y. And now I can solve this like I'd solve an equation. So I can do -1 times -3 and get +3. And then just like we solved equations, I want to move this 3 over here. When I move it over there, it does subtracting. And so I'm going to get b equals 2. 5 minus 3 is 2. So b equals 2. It feels like this is a good place to stop, but we need to keep going. I want to write the equation of my line. And so I'm not done yet. In order to write the equation of the line, I need m, which I have. I need b, which I solved for. And I'm going to plug it into this equation. So -1x. And then that's a +2, so +2. So that brown equation is the equation of a line that has slope -1 and passes through the point -3, 5 And we know that's true because we plugged negative 3, 5 into y equals mx plus b to get our line. So I can do the same thing if I'm given the slope and I'm given a point that my line goes through. I always recommend you writing y equals mx plus b. And then we're going to go ahead and plug in what we know. We know y is 0. I like to label everything so I can, when I go grab the numbers, I can see what number I should be grabbing for what letter. M is negative 5 over 3. And I'll put in parentheses my x value is positive 3. And then plus b. If you have trouble doing this multiplication, that's okay. You can use Desmos. And you should get this to be negative 5. I'm going to move my negative 5 over here. When I move it over there, it becomes plus 5. And we don't really need to bother with this 0 plus. So we find that b is equal to 5. And so we're not going to stop there. We've done good work, but we're not going to stop there. We're going to go back to our y equals mx plus b. And we want to plug in our slope and our intercept. So we're going to plug that slope in, negative 5 over 3. Always make sure we have a y and an x. And then we have a positive 5. So we are going to have plus 5 at the end. And that's the equation of our line that has this slope and goes through this point. So if we were to graph this, line, it would go through the point 3, 0. I'm going to do one more. Again, I have a slope. My slope is negative 2 over 5. I have an x and a y from the coordinate that my line is going to go through. And I'm always, always, always going to start with y equals mx plus b. If I write that down and I label all my values with the correct letters, then I can just go pick the value for each letter. So y is 3. I'll replace y with 3. M is negative 2 over 5. X is negative 5. I'll put that in parentheses. And then I don't know what b is, so I write plus b. Again, if you struggle with multiplying fractions, go ahead and use Desmos. Negative 2 over 5 times negative 5 is positive 2. I'm going to move my positive 2 over. When that positive 2 moves over, it becomes minus 2. And so I get b to be equal to 1. The two things you need to know in order to write the equation of a line are the slope and the y-intercept. And so we have slope now, which is negative 2 over 5. We have our y-intercept of 1. And so we can write our equation. We're just going to replace m with negative 2 over 5 and b with positive 1. And there is our equation. So the first step in all of this is plugging in m, x, and y. That's this step. Our next step is solving for b. That's that step. And then we're not going to stop there. We're going to go back and we're going to plug in m and b to get a final equation. And that's what we get there. So before you try any of these on your own, if you are a little stuck, please do ask for help. And these are on paper as well. So the paper I handed you, you should be able to see all of them, even though you can't see all of them right now. So you should be doing 5 through 7 on this paper. So pause, try 5 through 7. Make sure that even though this is multiple choice and my other ones weren't, make sure you use the process that I did above. Make sure you, number one, plug in M, X, and Y. And then make sure you solve for B. And then finally, the last step will be to take M and B, plug M and B into Y equals MX plus B. Always remember, and you can see here that your final equation should have a Y and an X in it. The only thing that we'll be plugging in to get our final answer is M and B. So please follow that process, practice that process, do 5, 6, and 7. You can't see 7 on the screen right now, but you can see it on your paper. Pause right now, try these 3, then press play for your answers. It's okay if you get 1 or 2 wrong. You should then ask for help and we can fix some mistakes. So pause it now and answer these 3. So I hope that you paused and you tried these 3. I want you to check your answers. So 5 is A, 6 is C, and 7 is B. Hopefully you followed these steps. If you got 1 or more of these wrong, I want you to please ask me for help right now. Do not move on to the practice without asking for help. Hopefully you did your work on paper so we can look through and see where a mistake happened. If you got your questions answered or you answered all these correct and you feel confident, there are 10 questions. You can see those 10 questions on your paper, but I will also scroll through them now like I usually do so that you can put your answers into Edpuzzle. But you should do your work on this paper so that you have some documentation of practice problems you've done that you can review from. Take your time on these and good luck.